Something's in the air. It's ringing longer than usual. Good morning, everyone. So lovely to see you all here. It's not raining out there yet. It will, probably at some point. It only rained once this week, right? For 5 days. We all thought Noah was coming, for sure. And of course, what a storm in the world, in the political kind of chaos that we are all weathering. Gathering here on Sunday mornings, that's just one of the ways we can cope with what is happening in the world in this overwhelming, messy life. Whether you consider it a spiritual life or a life journey, there's that famous quote that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. Gathering here helps us find a way through. Today, we're going to spend some time reflecting on language and the idea of hospitality in its largest sense. Hospitality of people here and elsewhere, all related to culture and change in the crazy-paced world that we're in. Yesterday, March 21st, was World Poetry Day, which ties so nicely into this idea of hospitality and language. World Poetry Day celebrates one of humanity's most treasured forms of cultural and linguistic expression. Poetry is practiced everywhere, every culture, every continent, and throughout history. It's just something in poetry that speaks to our shared humanity, something that sometimes other words just can't do. The simplest of poems can be the most powerful catalyst for dialogue and peace. And World Poetry Day was actually created by UNESCO in 1999 with the aim of supporting linguistic diversity, all part of their work of increasing literacy in the world. So in honor of World Poetry Day yesterday, I'd like to open this morning with a short poem by Rosemary Watola Tromer, and it's titled Toward Peace. Perhaps some part of me still believes that peace is a destination, a place we arrive, ideally together. I notice how shiny this belief is, like a flower made of crystal, beautiful, but lifeless, devoid of the dust and scuff that comes from living a real day. Meanwhile, there's an invitation to grow into peace the way real flowers grow, from dirt into air, with blight and drought, beetles and hail. And this invitation is to live in the tangle and fear of failure, to be humbled by our own inner wars, and to wonder how to find a living peace right here. A peace that arrives when we take just one step through the mess, one step toward compassion. And we notice as our foot rises, our heart also rises. And in that lifted moment, still scraping along in the dirt, there is a sense of peace so real, we become light. We become the momentum that is the change. Please rise as you're able to sing our opening song, 1074, Turn the World Around.
Turn the
not quite World Poetry Day, but a song full of words to get our mouths moving this morning. Well, welcome again. My name's Rebecca. I'm your service coordinator this morning. In last week's service, Bruce, in his wonderful service about words, he actually gave a new nickname to the service team members. It was said really quickly in the service. You may not have caught it. Apparently this morning in this role, I am your service dog. Puppy. More on that in a minute. All right, Bruce, we all admire your wonderful way with words. You are a wonderful linguistic enthusiast or word lover, or my favorite term for someone like you, a verbivore. You are a verbivore. Sorry, your service dog digresses. I just want to say for the record, I am much more of a cat person myself. Totally true. It's also a quiet link back to the service where I dressed up as cat girl. Note, not dog girl. Go find that one on YouTube if you missed it and are curious. Anyway, I am a cat person, but you can't really be a service cat up here now, can you? That just doesn't work. You can have kittens, though, and our family adopted these two beauties 3 weeks ago. I know. So now we have even more things to talk about over casserole lunch later. I got cat photos to show you. Okay, but I really do digress. We welcome all to this caring community of North Shore Unitarians, whether you're a cat person or a dog person or a ferret person or just a human person, because most of us are that for sure, or one who prefers solitude much of the time. We come here to meet others who share our curiosity about life, our sense of wonder about the world, and our growing moral despair in this 21st century. Here we find solace in community and connection. Here in the home of the North Shore Unitarians, this beautiful wooden building, on the marvelous bit of forest on the North Shore, on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. Thank you all for showing up this morning. All humor aside, Bruce did a marvelous job last week walking us through examples of religious language and the challenge of finding vocabulary that doesn't make some of us bristle, and acknowledging that when we hear a word that just doesn't really work for us, we can choose to be glad that for someone else here who will appreciate and find deep meaning in the word. So in that light, here's a quote to start our service this morning, but a quote that starts with the G word, God. And I'm hoping we can invoke that linguistic benevolence that Bruce coached us in last week. If that word triggers you, then may I preemptively suggest you just hiccup over that first word, because the power of the quote lies in that beyond. It has meaning for all of us, theist, atheist, or agnostic, or anywhere in between. Here's the quote. God doesn't die the day we cease to believe in a personal deity, but we die on the day when our lives cease to be illumined by the steady radiance renewed daily of a wonder and awe, the source of which is beyond all reason. And that just felt so right for today in this crazy world that we're in. It's the loss of awe and wonder and joy. That's what truly extinguishes our life, our sense of joy in life, much more than the rejection of any one religious belief or piece of dogma. And how Unitarian is that? That's what we do here. We illumine our lives. We engage feelings and experiences that transcend reason and invoke awe and wonder and joy. We gather to inspire each other to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. And we do that in the loving embrace of community. Each week we start our service with the lighting of the chalice, and it's with great honor and delight that I will welcome Janet Pivnick up here to light the candles this morning. We'll introduce Janet now, as she is our guest speaker this morning. Janet's been a longtime member of Beacon Unitarian Congregation. She's worked for many years in the education and environmental fields, and her story is that she had an aha moment that came after speaking at an environmental education conference. She realized that her work in eco-philosophy and culture change had always had this spiritual thread, and that realization blossomed into a midlife call to ministry. Amazing. Janet's currently completing her Master's of Divinity at Vancouver School of Theology, VST, and as part of that is almost halfway through, a 2-year internship with VanU, Vancouver Unitarians. So we so look forward to hearing your thoughts about humans and culture change in just a minute. This is your toe-dipping moment in the pulpit, though, lighting the candles. Okay, it's no easy feat, those of you who've done it. Okay, so as we begin our service, we kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. Next, we'll light our candle of joys and sorrows. There are many joys. The first one is that Leslie White is in the house at the back. Woohoo! Leslie, we have so missed you here as you stepped away to tend to your health issues. We are delighted to have you back in the building with us physically. Happy that you are in our joys today and not our sorrows or concerns. Wonderful. Is Moran here? Where are you, Moran? Yay, Moran! Okay, so Moran Amin was here with us a few years ago and left to go back a year and a half ago to Iran, and has just come out of Iran to be back in Canada with extended family. So we are so delighted that you were here, Moran, with us today. Yes, woohoo. Slightly different joy, a joy for natural beauty. A shout out to Julia Cavell and Judith Radford for leading a session on ikebana, the Japanese flower arranging. Folks who were at the first session learned a lot and have a very different perspective on what is beautiful and natural. If you're interested in joining the second session, it will be on April 1st. So please speak to Julia or Judith. Are there other joys to share this morning? Yes, John Viasucci is also here. Wonderful to have you with us, John. Well, here's a global joy and concern. It kind of crosses both territories. Today, March 22nd, is World Water Day. Also coordinated by the UN, World Water Day raises awareness of the 2.2 billion people living without access to safe water, some of which are in Canada in our northern Indigenous communities. And of course, the global water crisis is a big issue around the world. Their theme for this year's campaign is the Water Day theme is Water and Gender, where waters flow, equality grows, because it highlights the unequal access to water disproportionately affecting women and girls who often bear the responsibility of collecting water. And that compromises their safety and their access to education. And of course, locally, we have the Capilano and Seymour reservoirs, which kind of hold up how we value the protection of high-quality water. Back to kind of joys and sorrows. Are there any other joys and sorrows in our community this morning? Roy is here. We're glad you're here, Roy. And I guess you've shared with us that Pat is home again, having been in hospital, but is back home again, which is good. Any other joys or sorrows? All right. Well, our last candle, which is a candle of global concern that Janet has just lit. Here's a meandering thought around global concerns this morning. That quote that I read earlier, "We die on the day that our lives cease to be illumined by the steady radiance of a wonder and awe, the source of which is beyond all reason." That came from Dag Hammarskjöld. Yeah, he was a Swede, right? An economist and a diplomat who served as the second Secretary of the UN from 1953 to 1961. As of 2026, he remains the youngest person to have ever held that post of UN Secretary General. He was 47 when he was elected to the role. His tenure at the time in the yet newly formed UN, was characterized by efforts to make the UN more responsive to global issues. He presided over the creation of the first UN peacekeeping forces in Egypt. He personally negotiated the release of the American soldiers captured by the Chinese in the Korean War, and he intervened to help defuse the Suez Canal crisis in '56. His second term as Secretary General of the UN was cut short in '61 when he died in a plane crash en route to ceasefire negotiations amidst the Congo crisis. From the outset, it was suspected that the plane was intentionally shut down. And there's been multiple investigations over the years as new evidence arose, the last time just in 2015. There's a whole rabbit hole on the internet about conspiracy theory and other bits and facts and details you can go into. But I share this because the world is no different now. 75 years later, there's still awful things happening in the world. There always have been. Corruption, stealing of natural resources from one country or another. Humans are capable of such evil acts, as well as so much goodness. And we must aim for the goodness and good acts. a creative evolution of sorts. We must love the world into a higher standard of care and interconnection than currently demonstrated by many nations and world leaders. Dag Hammarskjöld, in his role at the UN, was exposed constantly to criticism all across the world and obviously unrestrained violence. And he was a deeply spiritual man. One of his most famous quotes was from 1960, and he said, "Working at the edge of the development of human society is work on the brink of the unknown. Much of what is done will one day prove to be of little avail, but that's no excuse for the failure to act in accordance with our best understanding in the moment, in recognition of its limits, but with faith in the ultimate result of the creative evolution in which it is our privilege and responsibility to participate." He was actually awarded the Nobel Prize after his death for his driving belief that goodwill amongst nations and among humans would one day create conditions in which peace would prevail in the world. His aspirations have not yet been realized, as we know. So may we too, as we have lit our candle, may we too persevere in the pursuit of peace, both on the world global scale as well as a quiet interpersonal one. I now welcome Vox Lumina up to sing Meet Me Here.
Meet me here. Won't you meet me here? Where the old fences under horizons begin. And there's a poem in the silence
Thank you, Vox Lumina. Such a beautiful, invoking song. So in just a moment, Janet will come up to share some thoughts about hospitality and connection. And I wanted to share a little story about humans and change. It's a really simple story that arose in a conversation last week over soup. It was a conversation with Judith Radford and Susan Mitchell. The soup was splendid, but the conversation was wonderful. And it threw me as I drove home into a deep contemplation about comfort zones and about adaptation and learning. And it all started with hearing that Judith and Susan are both part of a group that plays mahjong together. Maj, as the locals, regulars call it. How many of you play this game, mahjong? Okay, so only a handful. Marcia's saying not very well, is what I'm gathering. Okay. I do not play, but now I might learn. So Susan and Judith have both learned to play the game in the last decade, and they were mentored by other women to play the game. And as I listened to their conversation, there were just some elements that stood out for me that embedded in their experience of learning mahjong. So Susan shared that she remembers vividly the first time she ever saw the game being played. It was in the final scene of a popular movie some years ago. There was a mother and daughter playing, rapid pace of play, the sound of tiles hitting the table. And you remember being so curious because it was so different. And you thought, I want to learn that game. And Judith was introduced very differently. It came, I think, through a good friend who spoke of her passion of playing the game, her delight, and she encouraged Judith to learn. So very different approaches. Both Judith and Susan described how it took some time to adjust to the game, because there's some very different things about mahjong. The language is different, the symbols are different. In general, things go counterclockwise in mahjong, well, except for one thing, which is the drawing of tiles, and that goes clockwise still. That's all quite different than many of our games. And in the American style of mahjong, which is what they play, the winning hand, the winning combination of tiles, it changes every year. Every year, a new combination is published, and mahjong players around the world playing the American style have to adjust to a new combination. And all of that, again, simple example, just really made me think, no matter what our age or stage in life or our current reality, it is with interest and curiosity that can lead us to have an easier time learning new things or adjusting to change, whether it's a new language or a game or dealing with life or common culture or any form of loss or challenge. That's my segue, Janet. Over to you. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Hello, just getting everything set. Is that good? Okay. Thank you. Well, it's lovely to be here with all of you. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be in this gorgeous sanctuary. I've seen it from out there, but I've not seen it from here, and it is truly beautiful. I love the birds, and they just fit right in with the wood. Thank you for putting together such a lovely service. So, for the past 7 years, I've been in the midst of a dilemma, a puzzle that I've been trying to untangle. I think that we might share this dilemma. So my intent today is to explore our way through these tangles. But before we can do that, I need to back up to provide some context about where this puzzle came from. For many years, as you heard when Rebecca introduced me, I worked in the environmental field. First as an environmental scientist, then as an environmental educator, and then I became intrigued by eco-philosophy. Now, there are many different eco-philosophies. You may have heard of deep ecology, or ecofeminism, or social ecology. But they all have a basic belief in common that was articulated in 2 sentences by Joseph Desjardins. Eco-philosophers suggest that solutions to the grave environmental crisis require more than mere reform of our personal and social practices. They believe it requires a radical transformation in our worldview. That's a big ask to change our worldview. Worldview change is not simply a change in actions or behavior that arises from commonly held understandings. It actually requires a whole new way of seeing the world and ourselves. We have to step outside of how we know and see to entertain something radically different. We actually change the lens with which we see the world. So a common example of this kind of shift is the Copernican revolution, a change from seeing the Earth as the center of the universe to recognizing that the Earth is just one planet of many that orbits the sun. Of course, today, the thought of the Earth being at the center of the universe is absurd. But let's for a moment go back to the Renaissance. Imagine that you've devoted your life to the Catholic Church and all that it stands for. The idea that the Earth is the center of the universe is not just a belief that you can hold at arm's length and examine. It's how you understand yourself in the world. It's the lens through which everything in your world makes sense. God made the Earth, and humans are the apex of his creation. How then could it be possible that the Earth is only one planet of many, and that this tiny planet revolves around the sun? I love the background music. We have to have some empathy for that viewpoint. Just think of the terror and confusion that would result from having that understanding questioned. For people living at that time, there is truth in their assertion that the Earth is at the center of the universe. It may not be factual truth, but that doesn't mean that it is any less real to them. Finding our way through worldview change means taking that truth seriously, understanding it, honoring it, and working with it. So, eco-philosophers believe that this kind of worldview change is needed to achieve sustainability. And I thought that they were onto something. Developing environmentally conscious behavior seemed like band-aid solutions for what was a much more profound issue of understanding ourselves as separate from nature. But as an educator, I couldn't imagine what kind of education programs I could develop that would help people to change their worldview. How do we help people to make the leap from seeing the Earth as the center of the universe, a viewpoint that has shaped their whole way of knowing, to embrace a way of seeing that is frightening and strange? How do we help people to step outside of themselves and see the world differently? So I went back to school and undertook a doctorate on worldview change, or what I came to call culture change. As part of my research, I interviewed people who saw the world through an ecological lens, and people who found that way of being to be alien, strange, perhaps disturbing, people who were rooted in a Western or modern worldview. I wanted to understand how these two groups understood themselves and saw the world differently, and what the challenges were in stepping into a new perspective. I have to admit, as someone who had spent years in the environmental movement, I had judgment. I viewed the people who were embracing ecological understandings as good, and those who I thought of as resistant to this new, better way as bad. Yet, when I interviewed people who believed that the status quo was the way that the world should continue, I didn't find evil. I found despair. Here were people who were disconnected from a sense of belonging in the world. But unlike the environmentalists, who were clear that the wounds to heart and soul that they were experiencing were because of our separation from nature, this group of what I'll call mainstream people didn't understand why they were feeling adrift and empty. I came out of those interviews feeling compassion. And compassion is perhaps the most important tool for worldview change. Wendell Berry, whose words many of us cherish, talked about environmentalists riding in on white horses to save the world. The arrogance and holier-than-thou image that statement brought to mind made me cringe. I saw it in myself. I saw it in my friends. I saw it in my colleagues. My discomfort was compounded by another quote that rattled around in my head, this one from eco-psychologist Theodore Roszak, and this goes to the title of this sermon. He said that many environmentalists don't trust people to behave as if they are the living planet's children. Was I really seeing myself as set apart, better than others who didn't share my ecological priorities? Was I really talking about interdependence and the value of all living beings, but excluding humans? I had to make a decision. Do I want to be self-righteous, or do I want to create change? I don't pretend that this is an easy decision. Who doesn't want to be a hero riding in on a white horse? It's exhilarating. Standing in our rightness has a moral clarity. It provides comfort. There's pride and strength and purpose and community. But creating change means forgoing those temptations and embracing humility. Fast forward 15 years. I found myself working at a university, supporting faculty with the pedagogical aspects of their jobs, helping them with course design and teaching technique. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action came out, and universities were implicated. We wrestled with how to help faculty to decolonize how they teach and what they teach, to shift our understanding of Western education to embrace Indigenous ways of knowing. Because of my background in worldview change, and because there's much in common between an ecological worldview and an Indigenous worldview, I was asked to lead initiatives in decolonizing and indigenizing curriculum. Fast forward another few years. COVID hits, George Floyd is murdered, Black Lives Matter is front and center in people's minds, and equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives become a priority in universities. Again, in order to actually change systems, we needed to step outside of the way that we had always seen and understood and structured post-secondary education, to listen and learn about other ways of knowing. We needed worldview change. But here's where things fall apart. Here's where the dilemma arises. I found that the work that I was being asked to do went against everything that I learned in my doctorate about how effective culture change happens. It went against my theology, my belief system, my values. Rather than compassion, there was bullying. Rather than understanding other people's truth, there were unchecked assumptions. The work that was taking place caused rupture and fracture rather than conciliation. It pushed people apart rather than bringing them together. My doctoral work had taught me to be a firm believer in Gandhi's idea that we should be the change that we want to see in the world. If we have a vision for a new world, we need to embody that vision as a means to create the way forward. Yet the move towards equity, diversity, and inclusion made use of colonizing methods, the very methods that these initiatives are decrying. So here's an example. The focus of anti-racism was on shifting who had power, who was at the center, whose voice mattered. All good things, but to really create change, we needed to dismantle a way of being that allows for power over by anyone over anyone. I was profoundly uncomfortable with this work. Around this time, the eighth principle was being discussed and debated in Unitarian congregations across Canada. I know that this topic is tender here. I know that the eighth principle created division. I too was part of a Canadian Unitarian congregation when the eighth principle was adopted. I saw the pain that arose within people and between people across the spectrum of perspectives and beliefs. I saw beloved community members leaving the congregation and others burying hurt feelings so that they could go on. What I was witnessing in the discussion about the eighth principle was people riding in on white horses to save the world, but not trusting their fellow congregants to behave as the living planet's children. That is, assumptions about motives were being made, rather than trusting that we all want to create communities where everybody feels welcome. One part of the puzzle that I was trying to untangle was what went so wrong, both at the university and in the Unitarian community. The answer isn't simple, but what keeps rising to the top is a sense that two different goals became conflated. The problem was stated most simply and memorably by a discussion leader in a course that I took on anti-racism with the Association for Contemplative Mind in Higher Education. It's a mouthful. She was a Black woman leading a discussion on racism in a mixed-race group. She said, with surprising candor and vulnerability, "How can I share with you my deepest shame if you don't even know my husband's name?" What I heard her saying is, we need to have a relationship before we can unpack those tender experiences of being othered. What I also heard her saying is, we need to find our common humanity. Identity politics has its place, but its place isn't in situations where community and relationship are the priority. So the dilemma that has held my attention is, how do we undertake the anti-racism work that we are being called to do, and do that work from a place of love? How do we all engage together in acknowledging, unpacking, and setting right the injuries that our society has caused to marginalized people without pointing fingers of blame or jockeying for power? How do we stop making assumptions and name-calling and start finding compassion in our hearts? Can we learn to trust that we are all the living planet's children? So the eighth principle equivalent question would be, can we trust that none of us wishes to cause harm to another? Can we believe that we are all in this together? Can we hold each other in community as we move forward? There are two approaches that I've seen in action that have shifted the narrative so that the work towards change brings a community together. And there are several other ideas on the horizon. The first approach came from online programs that I took in what I'll call trauma-informed dialogue. Although the focus of the programs were on anti-racism, indeed, one of the instructors is a social justice educator. The approach is neither political nor rooted in activism. Instead, the focus is on being aware of and managing what's going on in our bodies when we are in situations that cause distress, anxiety, or overwhelm. How do we stay present when people say things that are upsetting? How do we self-regulate? How do we recognize when other people are feeling triggered and are no longer coming from a centered place? How do we help to create an environment where they can come back to center? The recognition in this work is that we all need to learn how to be together in uncomfortable situations, and we all have histories and experiences that can make that goal challenging. Rather than creating two sides of a controversial or conflictual situation, the intent is to be together in a healthy way that allows us to be present with our differences and be open to each other's reality. The instructors weren't saying that they were interested in anti-racism practices rooted in love. That's my language. But that's what I experienced. Whether people of privilege or people who had been marginalized, we were all human, all accepted, all struggling in our clumsiness and messiness, all open to each other's reality. I've been heartened to witness the second approach at Vancouver Unitarians, where I'm doing my ministerial internship. The diversity of the congregation has increased consistently to the point that it's thought to be the most diverse congregation in Canada. This has happened through hard but gracious and joyous work. Initially, a group was formed made up of IBPOC and white allies. Rather than focusing on anti-racism, and this was just in the wake of the eighth principle, rather than focusing on anti-racism, the group focused on sharing the beauty of different cultures. There were frequent invitations within the group and to the larger congregation to attend movies and art exhibits, plays, and lectures that were rooted in different cultural understandings. This approach helped people to learn together and to get comfortable with different cultures and different perspectives in a way that was celebratory and engaging. There was a joyous and appreciative connection among group members. They're now shifting their focus to invite all members of the congregation to share their own ancestry and cultural background, recognizing that whatever our race, age, gender, we all carry histories that form us. These are two approaches that have found flower. There are many other ideas that are in the seed stage. For example, I've been interested in using Ubuntu theology to inform anti-racism practices. So Ubuntu theology comes from South Africa and is championed by Desmond Tutu. Literally meaning humanity to others, it is the theology of relationship that foregrounds interconnectedness and compassion. Or could there be anti-racism that is modeled on Indigenous practices of reconciliation? Or that is rooted in contemplative practices? Or, as in a conversation that I had with a colleague last week, anti-racism practices that find meaning through the metaphor of permaculture. These are all ideas on the horizon that show promise to help us to engage with the eighth principle in a way that is rooted in and creates community. My puzzle is far from untangled. I don't have a full picture of what went wrong, nor do I know the best way forward. But I do know that the approaches that cause fracture are not the only possibilities, and that any way forward will always favor love and compassion and community. May it be so.
I now invite us into the spiritual practice of generosity, reminding you that designated funds in our collection plate go directly to the not-for-profit registered charities that are local, community-minded, and align with our values. Undesignated funds support our internal operations. So this month, we're supporting the Wild Bird Trust of BC that manages Maplewood Flats out towards Deep Cove. The flats provide wild birds with sanctuary through ecological protection and restoration, and supports community programs focused on education, culture, and reconciliation. You can donate today using a variety of methods as shown on the screen, and if you pay by cash, please put it in a white envelope with your name on it so we can send you a tax receipt at the end of the year. If you wish the donation to go to the Wild Bird Trust, please mark the envelope for the outreach recipient. Please give as generously as you're able.
Beside us, with all your
I'll gratefully receive the offering. And in doing so, want to express huge gratitude for Allison and Catherine and our choir this morning. Woohoo! Amazing music. Thank you. In deep gratitude for all the ways we build community and help others outside our community. Thank you. Just a note also to thank those who volunteer in so many ways to make North Shore Unitarians happen, and also those who pledge every year annually and help support our staff, service team, and these amazing facilities. The work of this community relies on time, talent, and treasure, and we thank you for all of that. Some announcements. Please join us after the service. You can smell it. Oh. Diane Hicks is kindly providing us a wonderful casserole this morning. The suggested contribution is $5, but please, regardless of money, please come. A new Creative Garden series is starting this week by Elgene. Lovely. Thank you, Elgene. She's going to lead a creative writing garden for 3 sessions. Her words are, people make music in groups, artists often work in studios together, but writing is often a solitary process, but it's actually fun to write with others, in person or online. So when you hear others' companions or keyboards click, sometimes the juices just flow more easily. Elgene has lots of experience leading groups, so no prior writing experience is necessary, but come with a pen and paper or keyboard and meet in the fireside room downstairs for any or all of these Tuesdays starting this week. There's a request that you actually RSVP, so you can do that on the website or in person or on the bulletin board as you go down for casserole lunch. Carrie Burke is hosting a concert called Dancing with Darkness, the songs and poems of Leonard Cohen. Carrie has long done amazing work with Leonard Cohen songs, and he'll be singing and playing guitar accompanied by his friend Matthew Van der Gleesen, and he'll be on bass and cellos and vocals. We've had Matthew here many times before also. This is similar to a concert they recently did on Bowen that was well received. The donations are going to North Shore Unitarians, very kindly, $20 for amazing musical evening. Please consider joining. Next week's service, provocatively titled, What Do You Worship? Because the word worship actually comes from the Old English worthship, meaning what do we find worthy? Or what do we acknowledge is of worth? David Wallace Foster said, in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism, provocative statement, because there's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody actually worships. Your choice is what you worship. Is it consumerism, capitalism, social media, beauty, connection, community? In this service, we will explore what we choose to give our everyday time, attention, and money to. Are there any other last-minute announcements? Well, then let's rise together and sing this beautiful song called Answering the Call of Love.
Truth
Please be seated. Answering the call of love. Let us together close our service. We extinguish this flame. Carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. We go forth with courage and love. Just before our closing words, I really want to thank Janet for your words and your thought and your fresh, humble approach to this. I just really want to thank you for gracing our pulpit today. Yeah, thank you. So for our closing words this morning, I'm going to circle back to that beautiful poem that we opened with in honor of World Poetry Day, and this one's Toward Peace by Rosemary Watola Tromer. But as I share it again, I want to offer some thoughts from the singer-songwriter Carrie Newcomer, one of my favorite people, who said two things about this poem. First, that it makes her think of all the possible meanings of the word peace. I mean, peace is a word we kind of throw around in the world, and there's all kinds of peace, all sorts. Peace of heart, peace of mind, peace on earth, peace between nations, peace between humans and the rest of this utterly interconnected world. And second, it's of course a reminder that all of life is ever-changing, that impermanence is the only constant in life, that no one of us will ever get to a time here on earth where we can live with this great neon sign over our heads flashing with the words, done, I'm done. Yep, all the stuff that's kept me awake at night, over, done, finished, I'm complete. It's just not real. And instead, what any one of us can do, all that any one of us can do is just pay attention. Drink in what feels so right and so good and so true at this moment in time. Peace in any sense of the word just comes in small moments of beauty, waves of goodness that come in the here and now. They wash in and then out again in our lives, just like the tides. So Toward Peace by Rosemary Watola Tromer. Perhaps some part of me still believes that peace is a destination, a place we arrive, ideally together. But I notice how shiny it is, this belief, like a flower made of crystal, beautiful but lifeless, devoid of the dust and scuff that comes from living a real day. And meanwhile, there is this invitation to grow into the peace the way real flowers grow, from dirt into air, with blight and drought and beetles and hail and rain. This invitation is to live in the tangle of fear and failure, to be humbled by our own inner wars, and to wonder how to find a living peace here. That peace arrives when we take just one step through the mess, one step towards compassion. And we notice as our foot rises, our heart also rises. And in that lifted moment, still scraping along in the dirt, there is a peace so real, we become a little bit lighter, and we become the momentum that is the change. Thank you, friends. Take hands across the aisle and let us circle round.